MSW Media.
So yeah, now it's clean up on aisle 45 time. And for a long while yet, it is going to be clean up on aisle 45.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 279 of Clean Up on Aisle 45. It's Wednesday, May 27th, 2026. I'm Allison Gill.
What up, AG? Harry Dunn here. All right, so lots to cover today, including a former Capitol Police officer on winning her defamation suit against Blaze Media for saying she was the pipe bomber, and the Justice Department proudly removing January 6 press releases from their website. This caused an uproar over the weekend when so many people were doing it.
Yeah. And we're also going to talk about your lawsuit today to dissolve that $1.8 billion slush fund, as well as an appeals court allowing Jamie Raskin to file an amicus brief against dismissing the seditious conspiracy charges against the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, vacating the lower court ruling and remanding it back down to district court. We'll talk about that whole process. But first, we have some Hall of Fame patrons to thank, including Lynn Bentley, Patty B., Accidental Beans Bird Sanctuary founder. Tiffany Trump was adopted. Carol Hopkins. Please don't read this on the pod. We don't need a call out. Thanks for what you do. Je suis fatigué. Scott Gregis, Maria Tovar, at Dirt Road Dems. The law offices of redacted Epstein and redacted hugely criminal attorneys. It's one of my faves. Sharon Tukalski, Clover's Tree 73, and David in Brooklyn. Thanks to all of you. Make this show possible. So here, let's start with your lawsuit. So over the weekend on Sunday, you and I and your lawyer, Brendan Ballou, talked about the lawsuit that you and Danny Hodges have filed to dissolve the $1.776 billion slush fund that they are trying to make available to what now Trump promises will also include January 6th insurrectionists.
Yeah.
And one of the main legal questions I had for your lawyer was standing. Like, how do you and Danny have standing? And the basic principle behind what gives you the legal right to sue here is that, you already experienced threats, and Danny and a lot of the Capitol Police officers experience threats of violence, of potential violence, and that those threats have and will continue to increase because these payouts to, potential future payouts to January 6th insurrectionists who are already currently threatening you, will bolster them. It will embolden them to continue. And not only will it embolden them to continue their threats and perhaps carry them out, but it funds them to do so. So talk a little bit about why you and Danny wanted to file this lawsuit.
Well, yeah. So, obviously, we've talked before, which are amazing. That was a great podcast, by the way, with me, you and Brendan. But yeah, I would just point anybody that still has a social media on X, go back, or Twitter, excuse me. It's always going to be Twitter. Go back and look on Twitter and look under Daniel Hodges' post where he announces that we're suing. And even just that, our argument in court is going to be how much danger that this fund puts us in. And there are literal death threats underneath Daniel Hodges' public post. So you can only imagine what it looks like in our DM. So they are literally proving our point. Enrique Tarrio went as far as to say, well, he's made several statements about it. Enrique Tarrio is the leader of the Proud Boys. And he's going to say, hey, I'm not greedy. I just want $2 to $4 million. And then he said, liberal Democrats should be absolutely terrified because of this or something. So they're literally, I think, bolstering our case just by publicly, just the statements they're making, so I know this doesn't really matter in the court of law, especially a lot of times with, the way that we've seen a lot of courts go, but morally, and we're doing the right thing. This is taxpayers, I think, are totally pissed off about this. This isn't, a GoFundMe account, Allison, or this isn't somebody put their PayPal link in their bio and people can contribute. This is taxpayers not having a say in rewarding people who attacked police officers and were responsible for the worst day, one of the worst days in American history. So we believe we're on the right side of this. I believe Brendan Ballou and his genius, that he's going to craft a great argument to bolster our standing. And then also talking about the 14th Amendment, providing comfort and aid and payment to insurrectionists. And I believe just as a constitutional violation will also give us standing too.
Yeah. Yeah. And believe it or not, Republican senators also hate this slush fund. And so, over the weekend, I did a show on the Beans Talk, which is a short little video kind of podcast we put out every weekday. And on Monday, we put out one where I talked about the dismissal of the case against the criminal charges against Kilmar Abrego Garcia.
Yeah.
And how that could possibly endanger Todd Blanche's, his goal to become the actual attorney general, because right now he's just the acting attorney general, because it was Todd Blanche's fault. He went on Fox News and said, oh, we're bringing these charges because that Maryland judge, gave a win to Mr. Abrego. And that 3 seconds on television led the judge to find that there is presumptive vindictiveness in a vindictive and selective prosecution case.
Yeah.
And when you have a finding of a presumption of vindictiveness, the burden shifts from Mr. Abrego to the government. Now, initially, Mr. Abrego had to show vindictiveness, but once you find a presumption of it, then it's on the government to prove they're not being vindictive.
Yeah.
And they failed to do that. And so the judge dismissed the 2 charges against Mr. Abrego, all because Todd Blanche screwed it up. Now, I think possibly hindering his ability to become the actual attorney general is this $1.8 billion slush fund, because he has to be confirmed by Senate Republicans.
Yeah.
And currently, pretty much all of the Senate Republicans are really, really pissed about this $1.8 billion slush fund. So much so that they couldn't even, get their ICE thing funded. They all had to throw their hands up in the air and go on vacation because the judiciary members wanted to add provisions that would mitigate and or dissolve this fund, which is exactly what your lawsuit is trying to do. So I think that this $1.8 billion fund also endangers Todd Blanche's potential of becoming the actual attorney general.
Yeah, 2 things. So with Todd Blanche, with him, I believe he would have had a tough road for confirmation anyway, because he hasn't been, and this is, I don't think just as a Democrat talking, but obviously just as somebody, because obviously all Democrats, well, they should be, except for Fetterman, is going to vote against it, right? But Todd Blanche, he's Donald Trump's personal lawyer, and he hasn't shown any difference the way he represented Donald Trump, the citizen, versus being supposed to be America's lawyer. And he has not shown it, and it's all praise to Donald Trump, and you're not the lawyer for the American people. So I do believe, well, maybe that's just the optimist in me hoping for that. But with regards to Congress and the Senate with trying to kill the slush fund, AG, any law that Congress passes, whether they say, hey, this can't happen, blah, 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 it has to be, the House and the Senate. If I believe there's enough to pass it in the House and the Senate, Donald Trump will never sign that bill, which is the third step needed. The House pass it, the Senate pass it, the president signs it. The third step will never happen because Donald Trump will never sign that. So I believe that this lawsuit forward is the best way to stop this, because I don't need Donald Trump or the House or the Senate. I just need a judge to be able to, one, give us standing in the case, and then us argue the case to satisfaction that they rule in our favor. So I believe the best path forward is with this. And obviously, after we get past all the initial motions where the judge gets assigned, and then the defendants have to respond, and then we have to respond back. And so, it's not just going to happen tomorrow. But what this does do is it gets it, well, one, it slows it down. And, it gives other people opportunities to try to kill it at other angles too.
Right. And speaking of other people trying to kill it from other angles as well, like you said, Jamie Raskin introduced legislation, but Trump would never sign it. But CREW, Citizens for Responsibility Ethics in Washington, have filed a lawsuit.
Yes.
As has another person who is, I think, a former prosecutor at the Department of Justice.
Yep.
And I think I can announce, because this show will air Wednesday, that I'm about to file a lawsuit.
Yes.
As well. And, I've already filed my claim. For compensation from the weaponization fund.
What are these two things going to happen, AG?
And, because I already have a claim pending in court, in federal court against the government for my wrongful removal and wrongful termination.
Weaponization. You were weaponized against,
I was
AG.
weaponized against. And so if this particular administration does not see fit to help people who were weaponized under the Trump administration,
absolutely,
then that'll be interesting. And one of the other lawsuits is also by a guy who was weaponized against during Trump's first term in office. But I want to thank NBC and BBC for picking up my claim story.
I saw that. They're covering it. And you know what? That's the thing. We got to keep bringing attention to it, because that's just the brazenness that they're doing. They're committing. It's like we have to. Obviously, people are seeing it and be like, "This can't be real." Yes, it's very real. So that's the actions that we're taking are to try to stop this BS that is occurring right before our eyes.
Yep. And my claim is for $8.647 million. Just a random amount that I selected.
Random number, absolutely. Running the math.
Based on, my back pay and lost future pay, lost pension, stuff that, punitive damage. So it's, totally legit number.
8.6,
just like the 1776.
Absolutely, yeah. Totally legit. I agree, AG.
I think it's right on to the penny. So
yeah.
All right, everybody. There's some more terrible stuff going on. Speaking of NBC, I know NBC and Ryan Riley covered my claim, but they're also covering what the Justice Department is doing now on their website to rewrite history about January 6th. And we're going to talk about that after this break. Stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, everybody, welcome back. All right, our next story, as we mentioned before, has come from Ryan Riley. Ryan Riley is a very good reporter, by the way. So if you follow him on socials, he does a lot of great things at NBC. And the Justice Department has removed press releases detailing the charges against hundreds of individuals who participated in the January 6th Capitol riot from its website. The department confirmed this on Friday. But there was nothing quiet about it, the DOJ Rapid Response X account said in a post replying to allegations that the Justice Department had deleted press releases related to January 6th.
Right. Everyone's like, ooh, they're quietly taking these down. And they said, no, there's nothing quiet about it. We're taking it down.
Watch this. Yeah.
They said, we're proud to reverse the DOJ's weaponization under the Biden administration. We'll do everything in our power to make whole those who were persecuted for political purposes. This includes stripping DOJ's website of partisan propaganda. They act like the only people who made the decisions about prosecuting the January 6th insurrectionists was Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice and Joe Biden. It was judges and motions and juries and grand juries. And there's, 85 different levels of shit you got to go through to get a conviction. But regardless, a review by NBC News found the vast majority of press releases pertaining to January 6 defendants have actually been removed from the DOJ website as of Friday evening.
The move to wipe hundreds of press releases from the official government site is the latest and greatest attempt by the Trump administration to reframe the January 6th attack and paint the rioters who participated in it as victims. On his first day back in office, Donald Trump, as we all know, mass pardoned the rioters. Soon after, Justice Department officials and FBI agents who were part of the January 6th investigation and prosecutions were fired.
Yeah, and this week, as we know, the Justice Department announced their $1.8 billion anti-weaponization fund aimed to compensate those who, quote, suffered weaponization in lawfare. After Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche did not rule out January 6 rioters' eligibility to be paid by this taxpayer money, outrage swelled from both Democrats and Republicans in Congress. Dick Durbin from Illinois wrote Wednesday that the notion of federal government doling out compensation to rioters is absurd and offensive. That's in a letter to Todd Blanche. Tom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, called the fund a payout pot for punks on Thursday. And lawmakers aren't the only ones who are fighting back against the fund.
Yeah. Check this out. A fired January 6th prosecutor and law professor acquitted in a federal case, but by the Trump administration, filed a lawsuit Friday arguing that the fund creates a politically discriminatory process that excludes certain individuals who they say were mistreated by Republican officials. I think he may be talking about you, AG. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics, CREW, in Washington, a watchdog organization in D.C., they filed a suit Friday also calling the fund a jaw-dropping act of presidential corruption. It argued that the fund wasn't approved by Congress, unlike prior funds that were aimed to compensate victims.
Yeah, and Wednesday, 2 officers who protected the Capitol on January 6th filed a separate lawsuit alleging that the fund would directly finance the violent operations of rioters, paramilitaries, and their supporters. The lawsuits come after Ed Martin, who was removed from his role as the weaponization czar. Remember, Andy McCabe and I used to call him the Whack-a-Dagpa because he had 3 jobs. Weaponization czar, associate deputy attorney general, pardon attorney. That was his title.
He had 3 jobs and wasn't good at one of them.
No, they kept him on as pardon attorney, though, moved him to a different office offsite just to get him out of Main Justice. But he was removed from his role as the head of the weaponization working group. And he predicted that the Justice Department would give millions of dollars to those charged over their actions on January 6th. And he made that prediction way back in January.
Yeah. He said that this was coming. And I've said this a bunch, AG. This is something that Donald Trump campaigned on. He and the rioters were the ones saying that they needed reparations. This was as soon as Donald Trump won the election. They were saying, yes, we're going to get paid now. Yes. So not only did they know the pardons were coming, they knew that they were going to get paid for it, which, as going back to what we talked about in our lawsuit, not only does it, reward them, but it incentivizes violence going forward. And I think I've said this before, Donald Trump just paid his retainer fee for his militia, his armed militia that will come to his aid when he refuses to quietly leave office peacefully in January of 2029.
Yeah, he's using taxpayer money to fund his next coup. That's what he's doing. That's why the Constitution forbids the government from paying money to people who participate in insurrection and rebellion. There's a reason that that's in the fucking Constitution. Yeah. And it's for that specific reason. So you don't fund paramilitaries and domestic violent extremists and white supremacists and Christian nationalists or whoever the hell to do it again. I mean, that's, the idea of the sentencing that went into the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, which we're going to talk about in the next segment. The idea of they should have been longer, but the long sentences were for deterrence, right? You want to deter that kind of activity. You don't want to reward it. It's the opposite of what the law calls for. And Merrick Garland even filed notice with the courts on the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys, saying that he was going to challenge the judge's sentencing because he felt it was too lenient. Some getting 22, 18, 14, 16. Some only got 4 to 12 years. And even though both judges, a Trump appointee named Judge Kelly and I think an Obama appointee named, I think Obama appointed Judge Mehta, even though both of them allowed for the very rare domestic terror enhancement that was asked for by Merrick Garland in the sentencing recommendations. So to go from deterrence to pardoning and then to rewarding is what's happening here. Yeah,
and it's sickening. So,
but there's more from Tom Tillis.
I was about to say that there's some more that came out, and this is from ABC. Donald Trump attacked outgoing Republican Senator Tom Tillis on Friday, calling him a rhino, an acronym known for Republican in name only, and a quitter, as he appeared to acknowledge the ongoing revolt against some in his party. I called him a nitpicker, always fighting against the Republican Party and me, mostly on things that didn't matter, Trump wrote in his social media post.
Like war and Epstein files. Those are the
Right, exactly. Man, my gosh, you can't make this up. And he goes on to say now he can have all the fun he wants for a few months with some of his rhino friends, screwing the Republican Party. In the end, it will only get bigger and better and stronger than ever before, Trump said.
Oh, would you like to bet the House majority on that?
I would love to take that bet, Donald.
Now, Tillis is among several Republican lawmakers to criticize aspects of the current Trump agenda, which recently includes the creation of the $1.8 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund to compensate those who allege they were wrongly targeted under the Biden administration. The fund was created as part of a settlement, which I put in quotes because there's no settlement here, part of a settlement agreement in Trump's $10 billion lawsuit against the IRS. Now, Tillis slammed the fund as a payout pot for punks, as we said in the previous segment. Critics have said those who committed violence against police, including the January 6th rioters, might be eligible for compensation in addition to Trump's political allies. Quote, these people don't deserve restitution. They, many of them, deserve to be in prison, Tillis said on Thursday. Some of them deserve the pardon because they were over-prosecuted. No. But this is just stupid on stilts. That's what Tom Tillis said about this fund. And to be clear, Tom Tillis showing his colors here. These folks weren't over-prosecuted. Yeah. If your case sucks, you're not going to be convicted. Generally, ask, we'll see where the Seashells case goes. Ask Sandwich Guy.
or even pled guilty. That's the thing. They pled guilty. Like, let's be real here. Anyway, congressional Republicans on Thursday punted plans to advance a $70 billion immigration bill as Senate Republicans were poised to try to rein in spending for the so-called anti-weaponization fund, as well as Trump's East Wing expansion and White House ballroom construction project. Several Republicans who Trump has spurned have become the fund's most outspoken critics, including Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy. Cassidy lost his primary race last week after Trump, of course, endorsed his opponent. People are concerned about paying their mortgage or rent, affording groceries, and paying for gas, not about putting together a $1.8 billion fund for the president and his allies to pay whomever they wish with no legal precedent or accountability, Cassidy wrote on Twitter.
Now, Trump on Friday suggested Tillis's choice not to run for re-election was in some part because Trump didn't endorse him. He endorsed his opponent. Now, Tillis was asked by reporters Thursday what he thought of Trump going after some Republican incumbents in primary races. He said, be careful what you ask for. Okay. They got 7 months left in this Congress.
Mm-hmm. They absolutely do.
In defense of this fund, and we saw this because Cassidy flipped on the War Powers resolution and overcame Fetterman's no vote. And then it went to the House, and the House actually was about to pass a War Powers resolution to stop the war in Iran. So Mike Johnson just was like, never mind, let's go home. And he shut everything down and ran away.
Here's a history of running when vote.
In defense of the fund, which has also drawn legal challenges, Trump on Friday claimed he gave up a lot of money that he could have had himself by allowing it to move forward. And he could have made an absolute fortune if he didn't make the IRS settlement. Oh, so I thought you had nothing to do with this settlement.
They can't get out their way, AG, because he had nothing to do with this. This was all,
It's pretty weird where Republicans draw the line. Like insurrection, nah. But $1.8 billion slush fund to pay the insurrectionists, okay, that's a step too far. Apparently that meeting was very contentious with Todd Blanche. All the Republicans were yelling at him. And they couldn't get their ICE fund, because Democrats refused to fund ICE and Customs and Border Protection.
Yeah. So you said this from the beginning, AJ. You said make Republicans do it themselves. They can. They don't need Democrats, so make them do it on their own. You were loud about that.
They were about to do it on their own until this slush fund came.
Yep. They can't get out their own way. Can't get out their own way.
They had to leave, and this ballroom fund is just, we've had another shooting happening outside. Kind of near the White House, I guess.
This was clear. This was an isolated event. This was
which Trump is calling an assassination attempt. There's just no way.
Yeah.
But he's filed again in that court about how he needs a ball. The judge who's put a preliminary injunction on building the above ground part of the ballroom. He's filed another thing saying, "Look at this assassination attempt. We need a ballroom." It's a bizarre, weird filing that reads like the first two, like it reads like a true social post because they did the same thing after the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Yeah. But he also offered no proof that this was an actual assassination attempt. There's been no assassination charges filed against this guy, who is a registered Republican. He thought he was Jesus. If that sounds familiar, it's because Trump is a Republican who thinks he's Jesus as well. But yeah, I don't know why he needs a ballroom when you've got Marco Rubio's mouth. Hey, okay, sorry.
Well, bravo.
Oh, sorry, everyone. I know it's a family show.
Yes.
But we do have some more that I want to kind of cover. Because this whole thing with Jeanine Pirro trying to dismiss and vacate the charges, the seditious conspiracy charges against the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, has gotten very convoluted and confusing. We're going to clear it all up for you after this break. Stick around. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. All right. So remember, Harry, when we covered the story about Jeanine Pirro and the Department of Justice, this was way back on April 14th. They filed a motion to vacate the charges against the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys in a consolidated case in an appeals court. And I was like, but there's no adversary here. There's no one to argue against it, much like the Mike Flynn DOJ under Trump wanting to dismiss the charges against Mike Flynn. And that judge saying we need an amicus to step in and file and be an adversary, because our Article 3 of the Constitution says you in order to hear something in court, there's got to be an adversary, right? Just like how there wasn't an adversary in the settlement between Trump and the IRS. That's why they had a third party come in and file a brief there. So there's some backstory here. Like I said, back on April 14th, Department of Justice, Jeanine Pirro, filed a motion to vacate the charges with the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Now, that appeal was still active because Trump didn't pardon these guys, the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. He commuted their sentences. That keeps their appeal active, and that's how they were able to go to the appellate court.
Yeah. Now, this brings, this explains it a lot, because this brought about a lot of anger, especially by, myself, obviously, and a lot of other people. But on April 20th, J.B. Raskin filed a motion with the appeals court to appoint an amicus because, like you said, AG, there's no adversary. This is from his brief. Amicus has institutional and personal interest in this case. Very strong opening statement. Love it. Appellants were convicted of serious crime, including seditious conspiracy for leading a violent attack on the United States Capitol on January 6, 2021. Unanimous juries found beyond a reasonable doubt that the purpose of the attack was to obstruct Congress from performing its constitutional duty to certify the results of a presidential election under the 12th Amendment and Electoral Count Act.
Yep. And he goes on to say, Jamie Raskin does, amicus was personally present in the Capitol that day. He was threatened with physical harm and death by the defendants, and he and his colleagues were forced to halt the constitutionally mandated certification process, evacuate the House floor, and shelter in safe rooms inside the Capitol. He is also a member of the institution that defendants were convicted of attacking, and he has an institutional interest to ensure that executive branch efforts don't undo final judicial judgments that bear directly on Congress's constitutional electoral certification role are carefully examined by the judicial branch.
Yeah, on April 14th, 2026, the Department of Justice filed motions asking this court to vacate the criminal convictions of 12 defendants who organized and led the worst mass attacks on the U.S. Capitol since the War of 1812. Defendants' appellants are leaders of two extremist groups, the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers. They amassed weapons, established paramilitary chains of command, recruited and marshaled their insurrectionist followers, and personally led the breaches of the Capitol that resulted in 140 law enforcement officers being beaten, crushed, sprayed with chemical agents, wounded, and hospitalized, and made one of them run for Congress. Nuts, right? After months-long trials, unanimous juries convicted defendants' appellates of serious crimes, including seditious conspiracy to oppose by force of the authority of the United States government. Sentencing judges applied federal terrorism enhancements to calculate the applicable sentencing ranges. Even this president, who pardoned nearly 1,600 other January 6 defendants upon taking office, declined to pardon these defendants and commuted their sentences instead.
Yes, and he says now the Department of Justice, the very department that prosecuted these cases and proved the defendant's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, is now asking the court to erase those verdicts and convictions as though they never happened. As a result, no party before this court is defending the judgments, the guilties, the charges. So the government seeks to disable the Article III adversarial process on which this court's decision-making depends. What did I say? What did I tell you?
Yep.
The established path forward is for this court to appoint an amicus to present opposing argument and defend the judgment being ambushed. Amicus respectfully urges the court, before ruling on the government's motions to vacate the convictions and dismiss the indictments with prejudice, to please exercise its inherent authority to appoint an amicus curiae to present arguments in opposition to the motions.
Yeah, next, on April 29th, one of the Oath Keepers filed a motion to strike Jamie Raskin's filing. Kelly Meggs claims that Raskin's brief is a pretext of filing under amicus curiae status outside any allowable federal and court motion filing rules for parties in a criminal appeal where his filings serve as a partisan attempt to politicize this case, encroach upon the executive branch's prosecutorial discretion, rage bait his political base to continue opposing anything the administration does, and where his filings include the gross misrepresentations of material facts that act as a propaganda appeal to a violent faction apparently driven by his political party's rhetoric that threatens the safety of the actual parties, in this case, ultimately President Trump. So that's
one big ass run-on sentence right there, Kelly Meggs.
Man.
So he wants to strike Jamie Raskin's motion for an amicus.
Because he's going to incite the party to do more violence.
Right, because of that violent Democratic Party that Raskin belongs to. Now, the appeals court ruled on May 21st, just a few days ago. And it's a 3-judge panel comprised of 2 Obama appointees and 1 Trump appointee. And they ruled per curiam, which means no dissents. And they say, upon consideration of the unopposed motion to vacate and remand the response thereto, the motion to participate as amicus curiae, and the lodged amicus brief filed by Raskin, and the motion to strike the amicus motion and brief filed by an oath keeper, it is ordered that the motion to strike be denied. That's the oath keeper. You're denied.
Kelly Meggs, you're denied.
Yeah. It is further ordered that the motion to participate as amicus be granted. So they are allowing Jamie Raskin to file an amicus curiae brief.
So Meggs, you're out. Raskin, you're in.
And it is ordered that the judgments of the district court be vacated. So they're vacating the charges, but remanding to the district court for consideration the government's forthcoming motion to dismiss the indictment. So the appeals court has vacated the charges and they're remanding it back to the district courts, the lower courts, for consideration of dismissing the cases. So the judge is going to have the final say here. And then it says, in light of the government's stated intention to file these motions to dismiss at the district court level, the court concludes that vacatur and remand is just under the circumstances. So kind of split the baby a little bit here because Raskin wanted them to wait on vacating the charges before he filed his amicus brief, but the appellate court doesn't have jurisdiction, so they said we're vacating it here, sending it back down to the district court for dismissal, consideration of dismissal. And so right after that, the DOJ, Jeanine Pirro, filed a motion in Judge Kelly's courtroom, which is where the Proud Boys case was, and a motion to dismiss in Judge Mehta's courtroom, which is where the Oath Keepers case was heard. Judge Kelly is a Trump appointee. Judge Mehta is an Obama appointee. But again, both of these judges sentenced these guys to 22, 18, 16. Mehta, actually, the Trump appointee, Kelly, Harry, actually imposed longer sentences for the Proud Boys than Mehta did for the Oath Keepers. So now those motions are in those courts, and now Judge Mehta and Judge Kelly will decide, since the amicus brief was allowed, they'll get those briefings, and then those judges will decide whether or not to dismiss those cases. But legal experts say their hands are tied, and they will probably have to just dismiss these charges, dismiss the cases. So we will keep an eye on both of those for you. But that's the long winding history of what's going on with the Oath Keepers. And
sure. I was just going to ask you, so how does that work? So they hear the amicus, and they allowed that to be considered now. So is there going to be a hearing on this? Or is this just the judges now go back and they have to rule on it? They've heard everything. Is there what's the format of this? Is there going to be Jamie Raskin himself? I mean, he's able to practice law, or a lawyer for Jamie Raskin and a lawyer for the DOJ go to whichever judge hears this, and do they argue before him? Like, do you know the legal process now?
It depends on what each of these judges, Judge Kelly and Judge Mehta, want to do, and they'll, I'm assuming, file orders with instructions. Jamie Raskin, file your brief. And whether or not we have a hearing or not will be up to each of those judges. I don't know that Jamie Raskin would argue it himself, but
yeah, I didn't think he would, but I mean, he could. He's a lawyer, so
right. The amicus might just answer their own questions about their brief in court, but generally hearings are for stuff that exists outside the four corners of a brief. And I don't think that they did this in the Flynn case.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it's going to end up, because in the Flynn case, the judge asked an amicus to file a brief. John Gleeson did. And it said, do not dismiss this case. Right. And Judge Sullivan, I think it was Judge Emmett Sullivan. It was either him or Reggie Walton. I think it was Reggie Walton, but whoever it was, I don't think they got a chance to decide on whether or not to dismiss the case, because Trump came in and pardoned Mike Flynn. So we could see something like that happen here. Like if the judges want too much information about this for the DOJ's comfort, Trump could jump in and just pardon them. And in which case you would have to dismiss the charges anyway, which is what happened in the Flynn case too. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye on it.
We'll definitely be following.
But it's this isn't something that happens all the time. So it's hard for me to say. It's hard for me to say what might or might not happen. All right, we got one more quick story. It's a good one.
Yeah.
So we saved the best for last. So stick around. We'll be right back.
All right, everybody, welcome back. Okay, now we're going to end this show with some good news. I know y'all have been wondering, where's the good news? Where's the good news? Well, we got some good news in it, or definitely stories of people fighting back. But this is a good news story from Huffington Post. A former U.S. Capitol Police officer who sued a pardoned January 6 rioter and reporter after he falsely accused her of planting pipe bombs on the eve of the attack on January 6 was handed a victory by a federal judge on Thursday. The former officer, Shawnee Kirkhoff, launched a hefty defamation lawsuit against Steve Baker, a reporter with Blaze Media, in April. U.S. District Judge Rosie Alston Jr. entered the default judgment against Baker after Baker failed to respond to the claim. He didn't even respond. Wow. Okay. Kirkhoff can now pursue damages.
All right. So good for Kirkhoff. She, as we know, we've covered this. She filed the defamation lawsuit, and apparently Blaze Media didn't respond to it. And so the judge is entering a default judgment. And now all she has to do, your former Capitol Police officer colleague, is seek damages. Now, Kirkhoff said Baker ran false reports about her, suggesting they had secured forensic gait analysis, like how you walk, that matched the suspect seen in surveillance footage planting pipe bombs at the RNC and DNC on January 5th. An attorney for Blaze Media told Huffington Post they intend to, quote, vigorously defend the meritless defamation claims asserted against us in this case. But you didn't. You didn't vigorously defend. You didn't even answer the lawsuit. And that's why you got a default judgment against your ass. Like, what the?
How do you say that? That makes no sense.
We're going to vigorously defend this. All right, go ahead. No.
No comment. Wait, what?
Oh, that's bizarre. That's good news, though. That is good news.
That is good news.
But, like we said early in the show, another Republican has opened fire in D.C. Of course, Trump wasted no time telling the court about how this justifies his ballroom. In another insane court filing that sounds like a Truth Social post, Blanche tells the judge who's blocking ballroom construction. He says this, Harry. You ready? You ready for this?
Yeah.
On Saturday night, May 23rd, a shooter once again sought to murder the president, his family, and his staff at the historic White House complex. We submit this urgent filing to update the court on a second attempted assassination on the president within a single month. They haven't brought any. There's no proof, by the way. Of course, I think the guy's dead, so they can't bring charges, but he's offering no proof that this was an assassination attempt. Yeah. Last night, shortly after 6 p.m., an armed assassin approached a White House security checkpoint near 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue. What if he just doesn't like Secret Service? Like, you don't even know.
What if it was an attack against the police? Yeah.
Yeah. Professionally pulled a high caliber gun from a bag and opened fire in the exact direction of the White House. If he fired to the right, it would be the administration building. If he fired to the left, it would be the entire White House. Like, it was on Pennsylvania, right? And
yeah, that's what we said. Right on Pennsylvania. I mean, it's a hotel right behind it, and a pat.
Yeah, it's next to Lafayette Park. Anyway, it's nowhere near the fucking White House. Is what I'm saying. I mean, it's near, but it's not. You can't. That's not an assassination attempt. Brave Secret Service officers returned fire. The gunman was killed, and an innocent bystander was seriously wounded in the shooting. Again, the brief provides zero evidence that this was an assassination attempt, nor does it say that the innocent bystander might have been shot by the Secret Service. So anyway.
Yeah. Also, we'll add real quick for context, this judge that's overseeing the ballroom is the same judge that our lawsuit, I believe, has been assigned to. So don't know much about him, but that's why I learned. I know that name from somewhere.
Yeah, I told you. Yeah, during the interview with Brendan Ballou, I'm like, it's Judge Leon. It's the exclamation point guy about the ballroom.
About the ballroom. Yeah.
So he's already got to just be like, man, this administration.
This ain't normal.
So
this is just not normal stuff. So
yeah.
He goes on to say, he says, this underscores the critical need for top-level state-of-the-art security at the White House, including the ballroom. Look, I believe that we need top-level state-of-the-art security at the White House. I agree with that. Ballroom, not so much. The temporary tenant structure is also vulnerable to water and flooding when it rains, in that the White House is built upon a wetland. So is all of Washington, D.C., by the way, built on a swamp. And the grounds are inordinately wet. Over the years, many an evening has been ruined by even moderate rain.
What? What?
In a legal filing? Like, now they're complaining about the rain. Like, how do you put? Hey, it rains too much in a legal filing. Like,
did the old East Wing have an open dome or something? Like, what? I don't understand. I don't understand.
Yeah,
Harry, I don't get it. Moderate rain has ruined many a wonderful evening at the White House because the president won't go out in the rain because of his hair. It's got nothing to do with needing a ballroom. In order to protect the president, his family, and his hair, we must have a ballroom because of rain. It's just, I don't know, whatever. Anyway, that's our show for today. Thank you all so very much. Look, I think maybe today when the show comes out, look around for my lawsuit against the slush fund, and we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, quite a bit as the week rolls on. But we hope everyone had a safe Memorial Day and holiday weekend, because I know it was a long weekend. So I just, again, thanks to our patrons who make this show happen. Do you have any final thoughts today, my friend?
No, not much. I am back focused. We are, as you're listening to this, we are 28 days away from my election. Mm-hmm. So we are getting close, and I am stressed the hell out. So, but I do take this hour when we record this show to zone out and lock in with our great listeners. Y'all make me feel great and give me a little piece of comfort, especially when y'all leave like nice messages in the comments. So love you all.
We do, and we will see you, our patrons, this weekend for the bonus episode, and we'll be back next week. So thank you all so much for listening. I'm Allison Gill.
Harry Dunn. Thanks, y'all.
Cleanup on Aisle 45 is written, researched, and produced by Allison Gill, with editing by Molly Hockey. Our art and logo design are by Joelle Reeder and Moxie Design Studios, and our music is composed and performed by Adam Orr. Cleanup on Aisle 45 is a proud member of the MSW Media Network, a collection of creator-owned podcasts dedicated to news, politics, and justice. For more information, visit mswmedia.com. MSW Media.